Hypocrisy.
Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome to Lost-Plaining the Interwebs. I am your host, Nick Ricada of the Long Lost Shoulders. With me today is a good friend and long-awaited return guest, entirely my fault. Welcome back, Runkle, man. How's it going?
Oh, it's going well. It's good to be back. I thought, it's been so long, I should have brought like some chips just to sort of reminisce about that.
Crinkle them in the...
Oh, I didn't realize how much the mic would pick those up, and I was like, oh my
god. 800 sensory sensitive people in the chat just go ah. Dude,
yeah, I think some of them like sent me death threats over that one.
Drexel would do it every time. He would bring like a couple cookies and a pastry every time he'd come on my show. And this is early when I had like 2 Yeti mics. He's like, here. Look, Nick. Look, Nick. It's like, dude, oh my God. Like, eat anytime before the show, after the show, walk away, anything. He's like, no, I got to eat now. Now when I'm talking. Oh, God. But that's one of those weird things about, about doing YouTube, and especially with live streaming, right? Is you don't know.
You got to learn these things and just like figuring out what the mic will and won't pick up. Because sometimes sometimes it's weird. I'll have a noise in my house and I'm like, oh God, that's got to be super loud for everybody. And they're just like, we didn't hear it. But like the dog will be outside and will bark real quietly and everyone's like, I hear dogs. It's like, what? I just don't know. It's still figuring it all out.
If you're not wearing monitors with monitoring turned on, you would never know. And then a lot of times you can't know even if you are, because so for me, I have a Rodecaster Pro 2 or whatever. And so it has monitoring of all the mic inputs, but then StreamYard, right? It does back-end AI-based processing. It decides which of the speakers or the windows or whatever, it tries to tell you what it thinks you want to hear the most. And it actually lowers the volume on everything else, which we can't hear. We have no idea. We just hear each other just fine. And so when 2 people talk, one person gets amplified and the other person's just sitting there going, and we have no idea. But it's one of those facets of streaming that like they're trying to make it a better end user experience, but it makes it terrible for the creator in a lot of ways.
Or that moment where like it just decides one person needs to be super loud or super quiet, and no matter what you do, it won't change it.
Yep. Real quick to the chat, Jay Liebgott, I did answer your email. So check it there. And the other thing, guys, this is not a Chicago Bulls jersey, okay? This is not a Chicago Bulls jersey. This is much more important. This is a not Spider-Man jersey. Okay? I don't know who Miles Morales is, but I know he's not Spider-Man. That's the end of it. That's what I know. Okay. So with that, look, he's the only person I'm bigger than. We've got some topics tonight to talk about. The main stuff on the agenda, much requested yesterday, and actually what prompted me to reach out to Runkle, because I saw he was covering this, is the Murdaugh retrial motion. Now, he went through this on his show. I have read up on it. I haven't read through the motion itself, but we're going to talk through kind of the issues that are at play here, and just kind of what's going on with it. It's a very interesting retrial motion. It's not like this basic, it's not like a pro forma one, it's got some teeth to it.
I mean, every time I said this on my stream, but like every time you've got somebody who's, they're like, oh, we've got some new evidence, we're filing for a new trial. I always expect it's going to be some real bullshit. Like it's going to be something like, somebody's third cousin overheard somebody at a bar who looked kind of like a juror. And, it's like, okay, nobody cares. This one, I actually was thinking like, I don't think I'm going to cover this, except maybe I thought maybe I could just make fun of Murdaugh's lawyers for filing such BS. And so I pulled a copy of it, and I went, holy crap, they're firing, like they are making some serious allegations, and they brought receipts, which is the other thing. Like,
Yeah.
it's one thing to make allegations, because anybody can make allegations. You're fairly protected when you make allegations in in court, but whether you could back them up is the big question. And he's got enough, I think, to get to his hearing. And if this is borne out at the hearing, it's going to be real interesting, because first, he may get his new trial, and second, there may be another trial. Becky Hill could be on the hook.
Yeah, I would not want to be, if the allegations are substantiated, I would not want to be the clerk of court who screwed up the Murdaugh trial. Like, I would not want to be that person. So that's good stuff. The thing that struck me on this one was, in a pro forma motion, which, like, pro forma means you do it in the course, like you just do it because you have to do, like you do it because it's a thing you do, which is a lot of dismissal motions and stuff. Like, you're not going to win it, but you just do it. They'll just ask for the new trial or whatever. This one, they asked for if I'm not mistaken, they asked for the evidentiary hearing. They're like, we have this stuff, we want to prove it out.
Yeah.
And they didn't try to go straight for the throat, because this is a careful case. It's done well. And they have stuff that they're like, Judge, you need to see this. We need to be able to introduce this evidence. We need to bring this forward. This isn't a basic legal issue thing. This is serious. So I liked that.
There's another section in it that I think really the lawyers are going to spot, and maybe nobody else, but they basically go through and they say, you know how hard it is to get a new trial on this basis? Like, it is really tough. And you don't actually make that argument unless you are thinking you could back it up and saying, like, they're saying, like, it's hard and we are way past that threshold.
Right. And so this one, I think I always hate to, like, hype something in any way. Cause to me, the juror in the Chauvin trial who lied on who lied during voir dire, effectively, like, oh, and I've never been to anything. It's like, well, you did attend an anti-police rally specifically with the speakers of George Floyd's brother and sister or whatever. Like, I mean, that should, and you're wearing the take your knee off our neck shirt in a Facebook post. Like, those should have been disclosed. And it might not have even changed jury selection, honestly, because you kind of take what you can get when you've got such a public case. And maybe they thought that guy would be a good candidate either, but we don't know. And we don't know what they would have chosen. And so, that one seemed like this is actually a pretty good argument. And judge is like, nah. Yeah. We don't even want to have the hearing. Like, and that was another one where you go to a hearing where you bring the juror back and you ask him questions like, why the hell didn't you disclose this stuff? And then, the judge has some sort of ways to suss out whether or not this impacted the trial or prejudice was undue or harmful. And it's just like, nah, we're not going to do it. We'll just ignore that. So I don't want to, like, overhype this one, but it is one of the rare instances where you have someone making a motion for a new trial and they have something tangible to hold on to. But overall, the prospect of a new trial in a major murder case like this, I do think is low.
I mean, they're going to be reluctant to do a new trial just because, I mean, let's just look at the money. How much money was spent on this trial?
Infinity, because we had Judge Shortbus adding every single allegation, every single piece of evidence in the entire earth related at all to anyone named Murdaugh being listed off. Everything except murder evidence was brought in. And it's like, that trial was supposed to be 6 weeks, and I think it was 9 or 10. It was absurd how long it ended up being because of the financial crimes.
Yeah, I mean, we're hearing all about the money and nothing about, like, where's a gun? Like,
right. Yeah, exactly. Where's a gun? Where's any evidence that he, like, where's any evidence that he did this? It was all circumstantial based on cell phone times, which was nutty in and of itself. I don't know that he did it. I'm not convinced by that they proved him guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. But I'm not counting out the fact that he could have called in a hit or something like that. But it doesn't make sense either. Like, that part of it
Yeah.
he didn't stand to gain in any way from doing that. It doesn't alleviate his other problems. It doesn't, it doesn't help his other kid or anything like that. So it's very
Usually when
weird.
usually when like somebody snaps like that and kills their kids in that kind of stress, they also tap themselves. And
Yeah.
that, like that, I'm like, okay, like I don't understand it, but we've seen it before. But this, like, I'm gonna selectively kill some of my family and not others, is like,
Yeah. Yeah.
really, it's weird. And there's just somebody did this video about, like, here's how it could have happened, and I'm going, maybe, but if you have to put that much effort into like this hypothetical of how it could happen, you're getting pretty sketchy. It's like, so
Right.
I have questions, and I don't know that it happened the way they think it happened, or it's just, I don't know what happened at all in this one. And I so people are like, oh, you say you wouldn't have convicted, and I go, I don't think I would have if I was on that jury. But that doesn't mean I think he's a great guy, or even doesn't mean that I don't think he was involved.
Right. That's the thing. It's when you become a lawyer, it's especially a defense lawyer, and people ask you, well, wouldn't you have convicted him? You're like, well, you gotta understand. I have a concept of what beyond a reasonable doubt is. And if I can come up with not only a plausible, but an extremely reasonable alternative scenario that fits every fact that you present, every single fact, I have to stretch my mind to get to your case, but I don't have to stretch my mind at all for this other reasonable possibility, then no, I'm not ready to convict at that point. And I think on our channel we call it, or on this channel we called it the Bronca theory. We just laid out a very plausible alternative thing, and that fit the evidence as well, if not better, than the prosecution's theory. And it's like, well, once you have that, now I have to ask, how is this beyond reasonable doubt? Because this other theory seems reasonable.
And even if you're like 80%, like you're 80% sure that he did it, that's an acquittal. And that,
Yep.
that shocks people, because they're like, oh, I'm pretty sure he did it. And I'm like, well,
Then that's not guilty.
Sure, if you got to put the qualifier on it, he walks.
Yeah.
And I mean, he had just too many enemies, like too many people who he'd pissed off or owed money to or whatever else. And I'm just like, it's possible. So
yeah, and the one brief counterpoint, counter argument, counter statement, though, is just because it was a weird case doesn't mean it didn't happen either. Like, weird crimes, murders, these things happen all the time too. Stuff that does baffle our minds, and stuff that does not make sense, and is completely illogical and irrational. Those crimes happen also constantly.
Dumpster defenders.
Right.
If if I didn't have experience with just how stupid murders often are, if you heard that people got into a fight about whether they could throw a mattress into a trash can and somebody died over it, you'd be like, really? Like, over that? But I mean, that's what it's really, people don't really sort of understand just what crime looks like a lot of the time and how stupid it is a lot of the time.
Yeah. Yep.
And like, people are like, oh, they hired a hitman. That's got to be like, $500,000. I'm like, try like $500 and a baggie of meth. Right?
Yeah. Well, and the other thing is, like, when they're like, oh, it's a hitman, it's like a professional ex-Navy SEAL. It's like, no, it's
no.
like a hitman's a drug addict who, or someone who's under some other type of pressure on their own. Like, maybe they owe money. Someone you have leverage on. They may never have killed anybody in their entire life, and they may have no skills at doing it, but they're depraved enough in some way to pull a trigger on someone they don't know, to do something, either to acquire something, and it's not usually like a lot of money, to acquire drugs or a thing, or to, of course, expunge something, like, again, a debt, or something that puts them in danger. So,
and expunging a debt is a huge one. Like, somebody owes 20 grand to drug dealers, and that's usually like they're dealing drugs, They get pinched by the police seize their drugs and their money, and all of that money and the drugs are owed to someone else.
Yeah, they don't
get
care
out
that
of-
you got seized by the police. They care that they're out, 20 grand in cash and $50,000 worth of drugs. Like,
Yeah, seized
that's
by
what
the
matters.
police is not an excuse in that world. It's just like you owe the money, so, and they get told like, hey, we'll forget your debt if you go and and do this. A lot of people are real keen on that, especially because the way they enforce those debts is really unpleasant. Like, lots of people duct taped to a chair with a blowtorch kind of thing.
Two great movie references relating to that. One is Dirty Work. If you've ever seen it, it's Norm Macdonald, and it's one of my favorite movies. Kind of flew under a lot of radars, but Chevy Chase is the doctor, and Norm Macdonald's best friend, his dad needs a heart transplant. And so the doctor's like, well, he's way on the list because he's old, but if you give me $50,000, I'll put him up the list. It's like, what? And he's like, well, I got gambling debts. And he's sitting there. And then one time Chevy Chase is the doctor. One time he shows up and he's got his arm in a cast or whatever. And he's like, you know what isn't fair? If you owe someone $50,000 and they throw you out of a moving car and you break your arm, you still owe them the $50,000. Doesn't seem fair to me. And then the other one, of course, is not in jest, The Counselor. And if anybody has not seen, have you seen The Counselor? With
I don't think so.
It's a dark movie, man. It is a dark movie. It's Michael Fassbender, Brad Pitt, Javier Bardem, Cameron Diaz, Penelope Cruz as the main cast. It's phenomenally done. Michael Fassbender basically makes a deal with some cartels to sponsor a shipment of drugs across the border to sell, and then he'll make all the money, right? Well, of course, someone hits the transport and takes the drugs. Well, now Michael Fassbender owes the cartel money, and like they don't give a shit. He's like, what am I gonna? Someone stole it, and they're like, it's not our problem. That's a you issue.
That's a you problem. And if you have no other value in terms of paying your debts, then at least you have value in terms of being an example to everyone else who owes money.
Yep.
And like the cartel does not mess around with that. The cartel, they've taken a cautionary example to high art.
My favorite recent cartel story was the guy, he's at a party in Texas and he's on his cell phone talking about how he ripped the cartel off of $50,000. And then 3 hours later, he's never heard from again.
Yeah.
It's like, what were you doing? What were you doing? Like, you're not only did you rip off the cartel, you're bragging about it in public where someone heard you. You're done. Go away. Dumb. Oh,
and the thing is maybe they could walk away from the 50 grand. They will never walk away from the insult.
Right. Because if everybody knows that they can take 50 grand from you, then everybody will try.
Yeah.
And that's the whole point. But okay, so we're gonna talk Murdaugh. We're gonna hit the Liberty Safe thing, which I think it's a catastrophe for Liberty Safe. They're trying to walk it back. I saw potentially criminal in the chat here. He has a great point on Twitter about it. We'll probably bring that up. The Liberty Safe issue is a big one. But it's much bigger than Liberty Safe, and it's a confusing
there's other companies
issue.
doing the same thing.
Right, in the digital space and in the physical space, especially as those two meld. And that's the thing with Liberty Safe. These are electronic locks. They got touch pads or biometrics. Well, those things have little computers in them, obviously, to compute the input, but that means that they can be programmed in some way with a back door. And that's what appears to be going on. And sure, Liberty Safe talks about this type of stuff. Well, if you need password recovery or whatever, access to your safe because you lose your code, we have it. And so then everybody just assumes that, or they just assume then that everybody is aware that they have it and then can be compelled to give it up. And it's like, wait, no, if I have a safe, I want it to be like, I want them to have to cut it open. I want it to be the most inconvenient thing. I want them to have a specific seizure warrant to remove the safe, bring it somewhere and cut it. And I would prefer to have a safe that destroys everything in it if you try. Like, that's what I would prefer.
There's actually a lot of value in having the police have to cut your safe open. Because just the fact that they've had to cut your safe open really kneecaps the argument they love to make about, oh, it was a consent search.
Yep.
Like, oh, sure, we came in and it turns out the warrant was bad because, we relied on this guy named Jimmy off the street who has fed us 6 bad tips before. And,
Yeah.
But when we asked him to, he said he was fine showing us around and he opened the gun safe for us. And so it's a consent search, even though it's a bad warrant and all the evidence goes in. You're like,
And you have to fight that. You have to fight, be like, he didn't do that. And maybe he's a CI. You never know. Maybe he's motivated. So there's all sorts of concerns. So we'll talk about Liberty Safe. We'll talk about just this idea of privacy and protection. Yes, from government, by the way.
Yeah.
And I do see a lot of people out there being like, well, everybody does this. Like they don't have to. Like they don't have to create a backdoor for you or the government.
Yeah.
Like just because the industry does it doesn't mean that a company called Liberty Safe couldn't not do it. They just do.
It's clear who they're marketing to, right? They're marketing to people who really care about their freedoms, which includes the freedom to, when the government shows up and says, open your safe, says, you do it, right?
Exactly. And the other thing is, it's like, well, they had a warrant. I don't care if they have a warrant. Like, just because they have a warrant doesn't mean you have to make it easy. There's no requirement under any warrant law for you to make it easy to access a thing. Now, you can be compelled in some ways to provide stuff. Like you can be compelled to provide a password, but that's a whole different, section of law than compelling Liberty Safe through a warrant.
Liberty Safe's statement on that was really weasel wordy. They want you to think they had an obligation. They didn't have an obligation. They just chose to be helpful.
Yeah. Did you resist the warrant at all? Did you try? Because Apple has resisted, like for all of the shit that Apple gets, they have resisted warrants. They've said, no, we stand, not always, I know, but we do stand on this idea that privacy is privacy. And it was the San Bernardino thing where they made quite a few changes to how they did things so that there was a way to make it so even Apple couldn't have access to your information, that they couldn't be compelled. And to me, if I were a company, I would make it so I did not have a way to do the thing.
Yeah, exactly. We'd love to help you out, but we don't have it. So we'll give you everything we've got. Here's the thing we give to locksmiths about here's the drilling pattern, but you're still going to have to drill.
Yep.
But the other thing is like Liberty Safes, they state in the thing a warrant for the premises. What they never state is a warrant compelling us to provide anything.
Right. And just so yes, a container in the premises might be included in a warrant, but not all warrants are, not all premises warrants even are so generally applicable that every single conceivable space within is included in it. Because typically the warrant includes a space for the purpose of searching for particular things. And they tend to have to articulate why they think they'll find things where they're looking. And so when we don't see the warrant, we don't know how general it is. The other aspect of this is, let's say the warrant was rubber stamped, and we can talk about this too, because it just happened in Kansas, a rubber stamped warrant that was facially defective, but it's there, and then it's given, and then the privacy is invaded unlawfully, but you only get to then fight afterwards to show that it was unlawful, that the warrant was defective. But we just had a judge down in Kansas sign off on a warrant to search a newspaper for very specious reasons. And turns out that the district attorney withdrew the warrants later upon reviewing them. It's like, who asked for these warrants? Why did the judge give them? Where's the affidavit? The affidavit citing the cause sufficient for the warrant. Where is all this stuff? Make it public when this stuff happens, because what we've got is the potential for massive abuse by the government that then puts a citizen on the back foot fighting for their rights that are constitutionally guaranteed.
Well, and they need a special order to compel third parties. Liberty Safe is a third party, just like Apple is a third party. And so it's like, oh, you've got a warrant to search this property? That is not an order that compels us in any way.
Yep.
Go to hell. Come back with an order that compels us to do something and we'll talk. But for now, all you have is a warrant that says you can search and you can cut into things. That's not an us problem. And
Brendan, and the other
no.
consideration there is Liberty safe even under the jurisdiction of that court?
Yeah.
Like, because, jurisdiction, personal jurisdiction over an entity or a person is a very specific legal question, depending on what court it is, where Liberty Safe operates, if they're specifically targeting areas, if they do some sort of business in that state, they might be under the jurisdiction of the court. But if they're just generally an online safe sales that's based in another state and the safe is manufactured and then delivered by a third-party company into this state when someone orders it, the argument that they're under the jurisdiction of the court and would need to comply with a warrant request is very, very different. And then, so what they would have to do is then request a warrant and then ask for enforcement in that state of that warrant under, which is a much different process. So yeah, I agree. They're very weasel wordy. They're trying to scale it or walk it back now, which is great too.
But the thing is, the media bought into it. There was was it Newsweek said, MAGA upset at Liberty Safe or something along those lines for complying with search warrant. I'm like, they're not complying with a search warrant. They're volunteering to help out with a search warrant.
Yeah.
Like, and I mean, cynically, there is a certain amount of business that police, if something is considered to be a friend, because police buy guns too. And if they think that, this company is friendly to them, they might be more inclined to. Yep. But, yeah, I just don't know. It's, I don't know why they do it.
It seems crazy. Again, if I were starting a company, making anything that expressed the concept of skepticism of government and an adherence to liberty, then my product would be devoid of handing the keys to the government, of the ability to do it in any way. I don't care if it's an electronic lock. What it would do is it would have a one-time use code, or maybe like a code where once we sell it, we put in a thing, and then after 5 days or whatever, that code disappears from it's wiped from the system, and then it's entirely on the customer. They could maybe register to keep something from us. But I mean, to me, a better option would be to use some sort of third-party security company that could keep a password key. Lots of people use password keys, but for your physical stuff as well. Like, here, if you need to have us store all of your safe combinations and stuff like that in a secure encrypted file that only you can access, that we can't even access, you can do that. That seems like another service that could be built around this thing. And then Liberty Safe doesn't have to worry about it. And the whole concept is that they do this for safety, right? Like, in case, like, what, if you lock yourself in, you're going to call up Liberty Safe on the phone you brought and like, I need to get out of my safe. Or I know I'm being a little over dramatic. I guess the idea would be like a kid gets locked in a safe for something. They need to get him out. But the amount of times that this is a real problem is near zero. The amount of risk that law enforcement will inappropriately access something in violation of your Fourth Amendment rights is well above near zero.
Well, and the other thing is that there were a bunch of people who were owners of Liberty safes, and they were saying, listen, I've had a moment where I was locked out and you wouldn't give me my own code. You said that you could only communicate with a locksmith, and the locksmith coming out for a safe lockout call is probably charging like $500.
Right. Very specialized, not super frequent need.
Yeah. And now, if all they're doing is just being the person that Liberty Safe trusts with that code, it's like, okay, well, I just had to pay a locksmith $500 for nothing. And like, why? They took away all of the advantages for the consumer and instead just, gave them to, gave them to private companies and the police.
Yep. And that second part's the real problem. And the police and the government and the ones who can ruin your lives.
Yep.
So we've got that. And then we'll talk about Texas border buoys. I think this is an interesting story that's developing. There's a new ruling on this where Texas is required to move these buoys closer to their shore. And I just want to know if this is a model to keep Canadians out, frankly. Like that's what I'm looking for. Cause I see Runkle over there, like with the binoculars, like eyeing freedom from time to time. He's like, God, it looks nice. Even Washington State looks okay. And I'm like, nope, you stay up there.
We're going to put up the barbed wire. We're going to, put some current on it just to make sure everybody can stay out.
Exactly. I don't care if we're Tesla supercharging that thing. We just need to keep the Canadians out. No, so that's an interesting issue to me that's out there. And we may get into this as well, depending on how the show goes. But I just posted a Twitter thread. I encourage people to check out if you're interested in the Trump 14th Amendment disqualification. I posed a question. I mentioned this on the show the other day, but I posed a question a little more thoroughly on Twitter, and I'll probably do a video specifically about this. But the idea, everybody's just walking with the idea that the president is included in the 14th Amendment, Section 3, for being disqualified from holding office. There's a very good argument that the president, or that they cannot bar someone from the presidency through the 14th Amendment. Like there's a very good argument for that. But the key thing is another one of those constitutional questions that has not been answered. So anyone telling you definitively that he can or cannot be barred by the 14th Amendment is not accurate. You can try and make a strong assertion about it. You can back it up with argument, but ultimately the court will have to rule on it. But every media outlet, every single one that I've seen, has overlooked the critical 1L law school question of, are we even under the statute in the issue? And no one is asking if this applies to a president, but he's not listed in the text. So we may get around to talking about that. We'll see how the show goes. Let me hit a couple chats and then we'll get right into this Murdaugh topic. One final thing, guys. Of course, I put it in the description on both YouTube and Rumble. I will be live on September 16th in Nashville, Tennessee. And I just got confirmation today, Drexel will be there as well. So it'll be me, Drexel, Cecil, Dick Masterson, Camelot, Andrew Branca, Uncivil Law, maybe others who have not fully confirmed or unconfirmed at this point. But we have a nice roster. Should be fun. If you want to come meet us, hang out, have some drinks, have some laughs, please check out the Eventbrite page, grab your tickets, and we'll hope to see you there. I don't want to belabor that too much. Here we go. Bebop and Rocksteady says, haircut finally. Here's some coin for the warm towel add-on. Try not to enjoy it too much. Gay. Yes, that's true. Tom Grawl, never trust the government. Remember Waco, Ruby Ridge, Agent Orange, or any number of times they experimented on troops. Yeah, look, it's Waco. It's like, well, we got to save these women and children. How are we going to do it? We'll burn the whole place down.
Yeah,
with them in there. That's what we got to do. Yes, and Tom, I got the gift that you sent. When I take a break later in the show, I'm going to go grab it and show it because it's really freaking amazing. Thank you so much. VVV Prince says, if you haven't seen it, watch Law Abiding Citizen. It's got one of the funniest court scenes ever and reminds us what we wish would happen to all judges. Don't stop being an N-word, Fig. I will try not to. I'll try not. Wait, don't stop being an N-word? Okay. I think I got it. The Only Cross says, hope the recent family time went well. Yes. Getting ready to drive my Uber truck back up to Minnesota. Cool. Have fun with that. Sad Lad Chad says, my liquor store finally got Angel's Envy unfinished rye. Wait, unfinished? Do you mean finished rye? I'm drinking it right now, and holy shit, this shit is amazing. If it's the finished rye with the Caribbean rum cask finish, it is really great. So glad you're enjoying that. All right. Let's hit this Murdaugh topic. I was reading an article about it. Should we pull up the document?
Yeah, I mean, there's a few parts of it where I think people need to see it because, if nothing else, there's one of the exhibits that is like just stunning in its audacity.
Yeah. Okay. So here it is. Motion to suspend appeal and for leave to file motion for a new trial. And then we've got the motion for a new trial. Okay. So here it is. Let me share this as we can. Zoom in. Oh my God. Why is it so slow? I hate this thing. All right. Now I'll pull this up. There we go. All right. So here's the motion for a new trial. So here it is. Specifically during trial, the Colleton County Clerk of Court, Rebecca Hill, instructed jurors not to be misled by evidence presented in Mr. Murdaugh's defense. Insane that the clerk would say something like that.
And also the timing of this is apparently just after the prosecution closes their case and defense is about to start calling evidence. And she's like, you're about to hear some stuff. Don't let it change your mind. Don't let it sway you. It's like, wow.
Impossible. Like, it's unfathomable that a clerk of court would do this under any circumstance. However, this has always been one of the interesting facets of the Murdaugh case that we didn't really get to explore from the trial. This is the backstory of it. The really dramatic part is how much that family has been intertwined in the politics and the law in that part of the state for 100 years. And so once you figure that in, now you go, okay, well, maybe there actually are some ulterior motivations here that could come into play where they wouldn't in a normal murder case.
And I mean, it's weird to think of this guy as somebody who's like a huge power player because he really looks like a knockoff brand Cabbage Patch doll, and so do all of his kids. It's like,
yeah,
this guy really? Like, if you met him at a bar, you would not think this guy was like the town heavy hitter. You'd be like,
right. But you know, if he's an excellent schmoo, like he does. The one thing about this is you don't have to be a great lawyer to make a ton of money as a lawyer. You don't even have to. They're really, lawyers of questionable skill. Like either way, they may be great, they may not be, but their entire job is to bring in clients. And if you're a whale bringing in money for the firm, you can be a big swinging one walking around town and also be kind of a weirdo. And this guy, by all measures, was bringing in, I think, half of the firm's income by himself, which is crazy to think about because the firm had something like 6 or 7 attorneys and he's bringing in, a plurality of money. And it's like,
yeah, I'm not going to name any names, but I could definitely think of some lawyers who managed to make huge money. And when you watch them in court, you're just like, this guy? Really? Like, this is the guy that's okay.
Don't talk about Rudy Giuliani that way. No, we've seen it. We've seen it through some of the trials. And that's one of the things I said at the start of the Johnny Depp trial. I'm like, be prepared to see some of the most expensive litigation teams that you can buy and be prepared to be underwhelmed by a lot of the performance. And anybody who looked at Amber Heard's team and realized that was a $6 million defense, and you go, that was $6 million, was Elaine Bredehoft and Rottenborn?
I think Elaine probably does a great job in depositions. But the instant she's in court and somebody can say, no, I'm objecting, and there's actually a ruling on it, she falls apart. And she was not able to deal with any of that. It was, and she'd get flustered in ways. I'm just like, I've seen students recover better from like a bad bounce than she did.
Of course.
Rottenborn was the better trial attorney by
far. He was. And even he wasn't great. He was much better than the rest of the team. I'll give you that.
I mean, he
also had a bad case.
That's the thing is I would love to see what he does with a case that isn't garbage, because there's points where I'm like, he's making a good argument. He could win on this. And then Bredehoft would come in and just blow it up.
Right.
I got so much shit on Twitter at one point because I said, like, Rottenborn just made the argument he needs to make. It's a long shot because they should have been arguing for this all trial, but this was a good argument. And people were like, oh, are you jumping sides? I'm like, no, I'm just recognizing that he did some good work. And then afterwards, I was like, everything he just did, Murdaugh erased.
Yep. It's great.
It was. I felt bad for her at the start, but then like when she did the media tour and she's like doubling down on everything, I was like, nah, you've committed to this. Whereas Rottenborn was smart. He just vanished from existence as soon as the trial was done.
Yeah, well, I kind of wonder if Rottenborn was severed from the team, and Elaine was retained, because the internal politics of a legal team can be pretty interesting. If Elaine was able to effectively convince Amber that the blame lay elsewhere than her, and that she would be good at that media tour, she's then effectively worth keeping. Because you're not worried about winning the case anymore. You lost that, so now you need to go public opinion. And maybe Rottenborn isn't the best face to do the public opinion tour for Amber Heard because he'd look like a simp. Murdaugh just looks like, that Gloria Allred chick.
Well, and the other thing is that Rottenborn's argument was basically, even if you think she's crazy and even if you think she's lying, it's still not like you still should allow her to say these things because of freedom of speech and because she believes it in her head. I think Amber was like just an uncontrollable client. And so she probably loved the stuff Murdaugh was saying, about Amber's the biggest victim who was ever a victim. Whereas Rottenborn clearly wasn't buying it. He's like, I don't think the jury's going to buy it either. We need an argument that somebody will accept. So,
yeah. And sometimes that's what you got. Although, I think I've said this before, but I want to reiterate. Under the law, under defamation law as written, I do not think Johnny Depp should have won the case. I'm glad he did. And I do think that he was defamed. But when we look at the 3 statements that were made, that were alleged in the case, I think it is a very, very big stretch to tie those 3 statements specifically to the loss that he was awarded. And the strategy, of course, for the legal team, even though under the law, you can't do this, it doesn't matter once you got a jury. They convinced the jury that those statements incorporated everything else that Amber Heard did to ruin Johnny Depp. And that's the strategy you want to go with. You want those statements to invoke these things, but that doesn't make those statements sufficiently defamatory under a pure legal analysis. And that's why jury trials are so scary in some ways.
Well, and the double trial aspect of it meant that they couldn't run their best argument because there's really 2 trials. There's trial number 1 is the actual legal proceeding.
Right.
And trial number 2 is the whole, are these people going to have careers after this?
Yep.
And I mean, the argument, in terms of like actual malice, if Rottenborn could have gone up and run the argument I think he wanted to run, which is like, look, she's a little off in the head. She doesn't know fact from fiction. She rewrites things in her head, so she is the biggest victim that ever was. But this isn't actual malice. She believes these things. She's not actually, and she's not reckless. She just really thinks these things are going on. I think that would have been a much more persuasive argument.
Yeah.
But that ends her career.
Exactly. Yeah. You're now the biggest liability on the planet.
Yeah. You can't put her in a room with any A-list talent because, if she makes stuff up about people, then you just can't. So.
Yeah. And so that's the thing. Again, there's a big distinction between what is right and just. And I think the outcome in Johnny Depp trial was right and just because I do think that she lied about Johnny Depp over years and specifically set out to destroy him and cause him harm. That seems to be plenty well established. But under the pure legal analysis with all context removed, where it's just a data in, data out thing. I don't think the case actually fit under defamation law as we know it. But that's why we have, that's not a bug of the jury system. That's actually a feature, because the purpose of a jury is the community policing itself, reminding everybody that the government's power to police the community is derived from the community's ability to police itself. So if the community finds justice through a jury unanimously, and it's not an affront to the law, if it can fit under the law, then you go with it. If it's an obvious affront to the law, if it, that becomes unconstitutional and needs to be questioned. But, and I don't think this is so offensive to the law that it couldn't withstand it. I just don't think it fit in a pure legal analysis, but I'm glad that it happened the way it did.
If you feed a jury a situation where they're looking at somebody going, there's a clear villain here and a clear victim, they're always going to try to, no matter what you say the law is, you can set up a bridge and a minefield and whatever else between them and where they want to be. They will find a way to get there. And I think that's what happened, is they just looked at Amber and went, oh, we hate you. We hate you a lot.
Right.
So,
yeah. And I think Amber, she made them hate her very well. She's very good at it. Red Mage 13 says, not sure if a valid point, but also having the backdoor access to their safes could be abused by, say, bribing someone for the code, then can open any one of those types to steal valuables, including firearms. Oh yeah. There are tons of risks. Tons of risks.
Oh, yeah. Let's cover this and we'll get to the Liberty safe after, because we're going to be all over.
I'm tangenting because I haven't talked to Runkle in so long. Okay, so here we go. Yeah, she told jurors not to be fooled by Mr. Murdaugh's testimony in his own defense. Ms. Hill had frequent private conversations with the jury foreperson. Now, this one isn't necessarily, this one is not necessarily evidence of anything nefarious. The clerk and the foreperson do have to communicate for various reasons. I don't know how private the conversation should be, but absent other stuff, this wouldn't be sufficient on its own. But combined with these other things, now we have questions.
This on its own would be the kind of thing where I was talking about, people file a no hope bullshit, motion.
Yeah.
Oh, she talked a lot with the jury foreperson. Okay, we're not actually going to have a hearing about what they said because you don't have anything to say it was interesting or whatever. But the other stuff makes this interesting.
Absolutely. Yeah, because just having a conversation is like, well, they talked about what was going to be ordered for the jury's lunch. The clerk asked the foreperson if anyone had any food allergies, or if they needed the jury, the waiting rooms temperature adjusted. Like, these are things, just sort of the general admin maintenance. The specter of malfeasance can't be raised by the situational conversation. Now you start alleging what was said. You have someone slap down an affidavit that says, yeah, she asked me about the temperature in the jury room because she wanted to know if the jury was hot or cold on Murdaugh. Yeah, that was a little weird. Okay, now we're in a different place. So on its own, not a big thing.
And that's in there too.
Yeah, of course it is. A court-appointed substitution for the foreperson the jury elected for itself at the request of Miss Hill. So that's interesting. During the trial, Ms. Hill asked jurors for their opinions about Mr. Murdaugh's guilt or innocence, which we were just talking about. Completely inappropriate. Ms. Hill invented a story about a Facebook post to remove a juror she believed might not vote guilty. That's interesting because I seem to remember when that juror was removed.
That was the eggs juror.
Right.
The one who's like, I just want my eggs.
You're not getting them, lady. You're post-wall. Ms. Hill pressured the jurors to reach a quick verdict, telling them from the outset of their deliberations that it shouldn't take them long. Ms. Hill did these things to secure for herself a book deal and media appearances that would not happen in the event of a mistrial. Ms. Hill betrayed her oath of office. So now they have a motive for it, of course, because why would she do these things? She's an honorable member of the elected official who represents the court. There's no reason that she would do these things. Well, actually, no. There is a reason that she might do these things, and she got that book deal, and that book deal has been pretty lucrative for her. I think it charted really high.
I think that I've heard that this is actually just like a self-published book, so book deal might be the wrong words.
Okay.
But
there you go.
I can think of other possible motives, because you end up with situations like, I'm just thinking of some of the people who have been found engaging in misconduct in like police labs,
Right.
where they're like, and the motivation turns out not to be financial, but just, we think these people are guilty, so we'll just kind of fudge it so they are.
Right.
Um,
Yeah, it doesn't
so
need to be complicated. They may not like them.
yeah,
They may just not like the way they look. They might have done sloppy work and just be like, oh, I don't want people to notice my sloppy work. So who knows?
and they do actually bring some evidence that she was misusing her office to try to promote her book. I think she could end up facing some jail just for that, if nothing else.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that's very, very problematic behavior. So here's the statement of facts. Do we want to, I don't know that we need to go through it. Do you have any highlights we should check out from here?
Well, there's a few things. One of them, I think, is kind of mixed. She said that the clerk told them that they couldn't smoke while they were in deliberations. That I think is, I don't know that that one's going to land as hard as they'd like. I think that one is one that's sort of in the context.
So you can't smoke during deliberations. I'd actually be kind of surprised if you could.
I mean, apparently they could smoke all the way up to deliberations.
Like they step out of the building, I would assume then.
Yeah.
To smoke. That would be the surprise. Once you're in the deliberation room, I would be surprised if you're allowed to smoke in there. But then I'd also be, I'd be a little surprised to find out you could be allowed out during deliberations.
People go to the bathroom, people, all sorts of things. So, but I don't know that that one's going to land, just because you don't really have a right to smoke.
So the idea would be they're trying to pressure them into a faster decision because, well, you don't get your smoke break till you're done. Be like, well, we're going to keep you here. You don't go home till you're done. You don't get to eat till you're done. These types of things. And sometimes that is how some courts operate. I think it was that Florida popcorn shooting where a judge is like, we're staying here until you guys reach the verdict. And, that's how that judge runs every single trial. Is that the jury just stays until they reach the verdict. And it might be 6 hours. It might be, 3 a.m. That's when it happens.
And she also apparently told them that they'd go directly to a hotel if they hadn't reached a verdict by 11. And that upset the jurors because they're like, we didn't bring stuff for a hotel. But I'm like, I don't think that's where we're going on this.
No.
But the big lines are aspects. So first, basically telling the jurors things like, before, just before defense is about to put on their case, like, you shouldn't believe what they have to say. Don't be fooled by them. And also telling them before Murdaugh testifies, like, watch him real closely, which they took to mean he's lying, and you should spot that. There was a moment as well. And the other sort of thing there is this Facebook post. And this Facebook post is weird because it's this post supposedly, according to the clerk, from this woman's ex-husband, who says basically she posted a bunch of, or we went out drinking. She told me a bunch of stuff. She talked too much about this Murdaugh trial. And that makes no sense because at the day she said that she saw this post, it had already been taken down and nobody's actually seen the original post.
Right.
Because this guy took down the post and basically said, I said some mean things because Satan got into me when I drink and I regret everything, basically. So that was taken as evidence that this bad post existed, but the original post was taken down before she could have, like, before the day she said she saw it, which is weird.
And so I had a case similar to this where I had a client who was accused of breaching a restraining order because they posted a review on a business's website about one of the employees. The employee had the restraining order against my client, and the police came and made my client take it down. and then they charged him with violating the restraining order. But what they didn't do was preserve the actual review. So the judge tossed it and says, there's no evidence that this even happened. You didn't screenshot it or anything.
Yeah.
So nothing. So, I mean, you have this big issue of, well, there's this post that happened and therefore the juror needs to be removed. It's like, well, what did the post say? Like at all? Like, what was it?
She's the clerk of the court. You'd think she would know to screenshot it. Like, you'd think that would leap into her head, but no, she's like, I didn't screenshot it. And when I went back to find it, I couldn't find it. But even worse, this post is from somebody going by Timothy Stone. And her ex-husband goes by Tim Stone and is not the same dude. And there's a picture of the guy on the Facebook post, and it's not her ex. This juror apparently showed a picture of her ex to be like, this is the guy. And, it's not the same person. And she's like, I haven't talked to this guy in 10 years because I have 3 different restraining orders out against this guy.
Right.
So, like, this whole thing about that. But then, and I think this is page, what is it here? Page 5 on the thing. I don't know what it is in the PDF because my PDF reader's being silly, but
I've got it on I've got page 5 here. Just one second. I'll pull it up. Here we go.
So they've got Judge Newman after she was dismissed. So the second paragraph there, Judge Newman said, "Oh boy, I'm not too pleased about the clerk interrogating a juror as opposed to coming to me and bringing it to me."
You're not too pleased about it, like, Judge.
Yeah.
I hated this judge, by the way. Hated him.
He was terrible.
Yep.
He's like, well, that's super prejudicial, and I can't really see much relevance, but I'm sure the jury can figure that out, so it goes in.
Yeah.
Murdaugh was mean to a puppy when he was 3 years old. In it goes to the jury.
Yeah, this is that's crazy. He acknowledges this. The clerk interrogating a juror as opposed to coming to me and bringing it to me. Why would the clerk be interrogating a juror ever? Why is the clerk discussing this stuff with a juror in any capacity? That's very weird.
Yeah, and it was the clerk who actually went to this juror and was grilling her about this Facebook post. The clerk said, the clerk told the juror that her ex-husband admitted making the post and told the juror that SLED had investigated and confirmed it. And she's like, I don't know what to tell you. It's not the same guy. It's not like he didn't post it. And I'm going, whew. Yeah, this is the kind of investigation you want the judge doing, not this random clerk.
Yeah, and there are questions about that because if the clerk's interrogating the juror, and if those statements, Sean brought this up in the chat, if the clerk is under oath, then you've got a perjury charge. And even if you don't have a perjury charge, if the clerk is stating a thing to gain a benefit or to cause someone else a detriment, and the thing is not true and the clerk knows it, then that is a fraud. Which is another issue. So if the clerk is inducing or attempting to induce statements through a fraud, you've got criminal issues there as well. And this is why you need the evidentiary hearing. Well, clerk, did SLED actually investigate this as you allege? Like, what happened here? Where is this? And put the clerk on the stand, put the juror up on the stand, say, hey, you're denying this. You've got an affidavit here. What's going on? Like, this is what happened. The clerk can get up there. No, it wasn't me. It wasn't me who did that. I mean, okay. Who do you believe?
And get SLED to also say, like,
right. Yeah.
Hey, we did investigate this or we didn't, like, whichever it is. But, either they investigated it on behalf of the clerk and that's terrible, or they didn't and the clerk is lying and that's terrible. So all of this is really, unfortunate. And this juror who was removed, apparently, like, the defense team thought she was, like, leaning their way. So it's like, yeah, if they were taking out this juror on the basis of this defense team, or basis of how she was leaning. But the other aspect of this juror is that eventually they said, we didn't remove you because of your ex-husband. We removed you because you made statements to your tenants. And she is like, well, talk to the tenants. Like, the tenants say I didn't make those statements. So what the hell? I think it's going to be really interesting to pick apart that juror removal, because when you're talking about prejudice, like, we knocked a juror out, you can't undo that, right? That's still
Nope. That's new trial. Like, if they can link prejudice, and heck, I mean, if they get a statement from a juror that says, I was there, the clerk said this to me, I thought, if she thinks he's guilty, they want me to find him guilty. I mean, he's got to be guilty then. Like, why would they if they can get statements like that out of a juror at an evidentiary hearing, it's going to be hard to say that there shouldn't be a new trial at that point.
Well, and further, after all of this starts, the ex-husband tries to phone her, and she doesn't answer the call. But she tells the clerk this. She says, my ex-husband tried to call me out of the blue. And guess what the clerk says? Murdaugh's people probably got to him.
Oh my God. Yeah, see, this is the drama of this case. This is why I was excited for this case from the drama aspect of it. And then the judge he allowed so much stuff that like wasn't interesting and wasn't relevant in my opinion. I didn't think the financial crimes are relevant at all to this thing. I still think that was highly prejudicial and not probative to the crime that he was on trial for at that point. And so I kind of hated all of that as it was. But yeah, it's like there's so much drama around this family, this guy who has such an influence in this courtroom, in this county, and then apparently also has significant enemies made up, that the things that happen in a Grisham novel could actually be happening in a courtroom in a place where we would normally say, no, this is just silly pop culture fluff. But no,
I've talked to several lawyers, including lawyers who've had much more illustrious careers than me, and said, like, has anything like this ever happened to you? And they're just like, no, this is crazy.
No, this is once in a career type shit that you're dealing with.
I mean, I think for most lawyers, it's never in a career, right? It's just, when do you
once
get this
at best?
Yeah. Like, this is wild. They said that that Ms. Hill passed out reporters' business cards to jurors and told them that they'd be famous and that they'd be on, they'd be on TV and all of this.
Again, get a juror in there to say, yeah, I hear these business cards that I got from Ms. Hill.
And there's excerpts from her book where she talks about just how thrilled she was to be on this trip. Because they said, one juror said that they had a craving for pizza and cheesecake, I think it was. And they brought them pizza and cheesecake. And she's like, wow. And I'm going, you've never dealt with, like, caterers before, right? Like, a movie or TV set, they can bring you stuff if you're important.
Uber Eats, you can get pizza and a cheesecake.
But I mean,
right.
This is like, she's just so impressed at like basic stuff. And I'm going,
yeah, well, okay. if you've never gotten anything like that, if you've never had a sort of, even a minor celebrity treatment, the fact that someone will buy you a taxi cab or whatever becomes like, wait, what? No one would ever do this for me under any other circumstance. What? Like, wow. And so mean, that type of stuff is motivational for people to do bad things.
Hell, I always fly like peasant class. Like, basically I get the ticket where they try to stuff me into the, the overhead baggage compartment.
Yes.
And, but I recently flew first class and I was just like, holy crap, I could get used to this. And what the, like, I actually got through security, and they looked at my pass and they're like, you didn't have to go through this line. I went, what? And they're like,
Yeah,
we have an entire separate route that you could have gone that would have just gotten you to the front. And I was like,
we have the rich and pretty people line. Why didn't
like,
you go there?
Okay. But then you get in and they actually like care about your comfort. It's weird. And you're just like, okay, I could get used to this.
Dude, when I flew first class for the first time, that was the last time I would fly coach unless forced. I think since then I flew comfort one time because they didn't have any first class seats available. I will always pay. Well, if my whole family was flying, I wouldn't be able to afford it. But that's just a general rule. Flying 7 people is a nightmare. It's why we drive a lot when we go as a whole family. But when it's just me and Lady Rackets, I almost always get first class because the main thing is my legs are too long for coach. I hate that aspect of it enough.
When you're just sitting there and like your knees are in your, up in your chest, you're like,
Yeah. And unless you're flying really far, it is more expensive. Don't get me wrong. But it's not that much more expensive. I was surprised at how little it cost over what I thought it would cost. And I think it's worth every penny. But that's for me, like not for everybody. It really depends how much you travel to. And again, if Lady Raggeds were flying by herself, I think she would have no problem sitting in coach because she's tiny. She's very thin and very short. So her legs don't run up against the seat in front of her. Mine do. I have to actually be kind of straddled just to sit. And so I hate it, man.
It's stupid expensive in Canada. It's like the difference between like a $500 flight versus like a $3,000 flight. I flew
That's
back,
a different story. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I went to Corey's funeral in the UK, and a bunch of the sort of people who watch my channel were like, we know how much flying messes up your back. We'll spring for it, and they basically insisted on like, we're going to upgrade you on the way back. And I've got like a chair that turns into a bed, and I'm going, this wouldn't be comfort anywhere else, but it's just such a different experience from what I was expecting to be.
When you're in first class and they bring you food.
And like, and it's actual food.
You're like, I remember meals on airplanes from a long time ago.
Well,
and Delta has good ones. Delta has a beef short rib that's actually pretty delicious. I'll give them credit.
Oh, Air Canada has like, we feed you because they have to on the long haul flights, but like the menu is like bread with misery in the economy, and in the first class it's like our chef, and they like list this guy's name and like, here's the wine pairing, and I'm going, really? Yep. Okay. So, but you can see just how wowed she is about this, and it's like you start to get this feeling that like, okay, she might have really gotten into this, even though they weren't, even though she never got that much out of it. And they've got excerpts of her book. Do not read her book. It is the worst. But at least you can sit there and be like, okay, you can get this impression of what she's about on all of this.
Yeah, and the thing that everybody kind of overlooks in a lot of court stuff, because we get used to various comforts, you assume that everybody is used to various comforts. And so when you think of motivations that someone needs to do something, it's similar to the hitman thing. You think of these grand things, like you think what you would need to do this. And you don't realize that for some people, it's much, much lower. Their standards are much, much lower because they're just stunned by any little luxury based on the life they lived. And that's not like a bad thing. It's not like making fun of the person. It's just they're like, oh wow, I can get this treatment. These people will pay attention to me. This is a clerk of court. Like, even ignoring the fame of the book and like the treatment that she got, her name recognition from this is re-election.
Oh, absolutely. And it boggles my mind that clerk of the court is an elected position. because I'm like,
Yeah.
why?
Yeah. Why are we electing a clerk?
It makes some sense, like when you've got like the police chief who's elected or something, because like these are people exercising discretion, but the clerk of the court really should be exercising a lot of discretion, right? It's like,
Yeah.
it's a job and you got to do certain things, but typically the person making the decisions is the judge. So
Right.
yeah,
Right. And so it's this is a big deal. This is a big deal, and I think the kind of ultimate conclusion that that I'm loving that I'm seeing is that this is not just a throwaway retrial motion. This
no,
has, if what they allege is true, it very much looks like they have grounds for a new trial. And the some of the hiccups that I've seen so far is I think one or two of the affidavits are, one of the affidavits is signed, the other affidavit is not, and they said that they could not arrange for the signing of the affidavit. That shouldn't be a deal breaker for this, because they could just bring in the juror to testify if they get an evidentiary hearing, and that clears up the problem very quickly.
they've got two jurors who they have affidavits of their paralegal who's like, I was there for the meeting, they said these things, we couldn't actually get an affidavit from them, but they said these things. I might consider that to be a bigger problem, the whole hearsay issue, if they didn't also have an affidavit, one affidavit from a juror. So
Right.
it's like,
Yeah, and so the paralegal signing it makes that testimony probably inadmissible, except we say, no, this happened here. This is just supporting the grounds for the evidentiary hearing, in which case we'll request a subpoena from the court. We'll demand their appearance to answer these questions. Once you do that, then that person can be brought in. They can be examined and cross-examined, and their statements can be, admitted or not admitted as evidence would, as the rules of evidence would allow. And that's the point of this evidentiary hearing. And it's like, we couldn't get them to sign an affidavit. Well, the judge, someone may not be willing to sign an affidavit, but a judge may really want to hear what is allegedly said from the person, because it might hinge on the balance of justice. And in this case, we have to remember that this is a total deprivation of liberty for life for Murdaugh. So if there is any prejudicial tampering, the court is under constitutional obligation to make sure that due process rights were respected. And if there's an indication that they're not, they need to try to get to the bottom of it the best they can. So subpoenaing the jurors, bring them in for testimony, the jurors may not comply, but at least the court can make a best effort to use all legal resources available to it to ensure justice is done.
Yeah, and I think that this is a situation where they're going to be like, no, we're sending out subpoenas. You guys are going to be brought in to, to talk about this one, because, yeah, it's it's a big deal.
I agree. Very, very big, surprisingly big. When I saw it, I'm like, oh, who cares? Murdaugh filed a motion, and then I started seeing some rumbling about it, and I was like, okay, maybe I should. This was yesterday. Maybe I should care, but I didn't have time to read through it. And now that I'm looking into it, and with you talking to me, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is fantastic.
Well, and the other thing that is just absolutely startling, I don't know which page it's on, because I don't know why my PDF reader is acting up, but it is Exhibit K.
Exhibit K. Okay, I'm almost there.
This one in and of itself is startling.
GHIJK. All right. Got it pulled up. Bam.
So you see, this is like a basic contract. What this is that afterwards she arranged for this film crew. They're filming at the courthouse, and they're paying a certain amount of money to the county in order to use the space. They're paying $1,000 a day.
Sure.
And she's got this weird thing where under miscellaneous, where it's like this choice of law. She doesn't want the choice of laws clause that's there, because she doesn't understand the choice of laws clause. She thinks that, like, she's like, I don't have any authority outside the state of South Carolina, so we can't have a New York choice of laws clause. It's like, that's not how this works.
So here we go. Colleton County, South Carolina can only enter a legal agreement for services if it is to be governed here in South Carolina, not New York. As an elected official, I have no authority outside the state. Right. Like choice of law doesn't have anything to do with where.
Yeah, it's just
where it's,
but
if it is to be governed here in South Carolina. South Carolina can govern it. They just use New York law.
And then there's this really interesting handwritten aspect. And this is where I think she could end up going to jail just on her own.
Yeah, so she says also, in exchange for the use of the likeness of Rebecca Hill in an interview, a minimum of 0.05 second video and audio clips will accompany the usage of the first reference. The book cover for the book Behind the Doors of Justice, the Murdaugh Murders, will be shown, and audio will include Becky's introduction as clerk of court for Colleton County and author of the book. This is amazing because she seems to be representing herself in two capacities here, right? Like this top stuff is as in her role as clerk of court, where she's saying, as elected official, I have no authority. This has to be under Colleton County. And then suddenly this is very much personal.
And she's basically trying to attach this rider for the use of the court property.
Yeah, which she doesn't have any, like that's not for her.
That's like straight up corruption right there.
Right.
And they note in their filings, they're like, they basically, apparently the company had already had the contract signed. So when she sent this over with this handwritten addendum, they were just like, oh, well, this is some bullshit, but thankfully we've already got a signed contract, so we can just ignore this.
Wow.
But can you imagine you're an elected official and you're saying, if you want to use the courthouse, you also have to pitch my personal
Promote
stuff?
Me. And then because her job on this one is should in theory be non-discretionary. Her job is to look out for the interests of the courts, which probably has a process for the rental of the courtroom, a predetermined amount per hour, day, or whatever. And then she would just simply say, does it fit into the schedule and does it abide with the rules and requirements that we have? Probably a pre-existing draft from a county attorney of the terms of use that would be signed by the company with very little negotiation room. And if any negotiations would have to be cleared by that attorney, like the county attorney would need to sign off on this rider here, like that.
Yeah,
you can't just like she does not represent the court in legal the courtroom in legal proceedings, so she can't actually do this in that way because she's effectively that's unauthorized practice of law, right there.
And also just like theft. Basically of the, it's like, I mean, most places, I assume here as well, have provisions, and I think they cited one that basically say you can't use your office for your personal gain. That is a crime, and that's what this looks like. I don't see how you get around this. So I don't think this part does anything for getting a new trial other than backing up the motive. Like their motive argument is what they're going with here, right? She wanted to be rich and famous. Look, she's even going so far as to use her office to, to promote her book. So we know she really wanted this book to succeed.
And in their allegation is that in a mistrial, her book would have been meaningless. I don't know. I don't necessarily agree with that, though.
I think the mistrial could have been really, there could have been a lot to it as well, because then you've got another trial. And I mean, presumably she might be clerk of the court on the new trial.
Right. And either way, just some counter arguments. Either way, the trial and the drama of the trial that sells the book isn't the verdict.
Yeah.
A non-verdict, a mistrial sells the same story plot lines of corruption and influence that a guilty or not guilty or mistrial, like all of those things exist no matter what the verdict ended up being.
And there might even have been more hype, because then you've got another trial, which can hype the book for what happened at the first trial.
Right.
You've got people being upset because once Murdaugh's going away for life, people are like, okay, he's gone. Who cares now? But if he's still in play, then that might generate. So I don't know. I mean, their theory, but we don't know. I'd probably make the same argument, but I don't know if I buy it.
Yeah, and the thing is, the interesting thing with coming up with motives for why someone does something, motive is not a necessary element of any crime that I'm aware of. Intent is an element of crime. Motive can help explain intent.
Yeah.
It can help, kind of solidify or congeal around the idea of intent or some other fact, but it's not a necessary element. So what you can do is you can propose motives that would give someone, a reasonable means of, in this case, they're trying for a hearing. So they want to propose motives like, this might be why she did it. We need to find out if this happened, and we can ask her questions about why she did X, Y, and Z, because this could be a reason. And if this is a reason, it's improper. Now, maybe they get in there and she's like, no, here's the reasons I did this and this and this. And they're not motivated by greed or some improper thing. And they don't indicate intent. Well, you're fine. But giving a fact finder a hook as to why the facts may not be as they seem is an important rhetorical and psychological aspect of the practice of law that is here. And one that's really illustrated well by the Innocence Project, who they go through, murder cases, murder convictions, and they start looking for ways out of it. One of the things that they try to do is find a plausible alternative suspect. Yeah. And they're not required to do that. It doesn't actually change the legal analysis in the slightest, but having a reasonable, plausible alternative gives a hook, a rhetorical or narrative hook, where someone goes, you know what, actually, maybe there is someone else who could be involved. And that makes a much more compelling argument than just, well, this is legally not correct. Or compelling story, I should say.
Yeah, and you can end up with cases where it's like, we don't have a motive. We don't understand why this happened, but we definitely know this person did it. And similarly, a lot of wrongful convictions have been formed around this person has a great motive for something and didn't actually do it. Yeah. I had a case where it was my guy got arrested repeatedly because him and his ex broke up, and his ex's tires kept getting slashed. And so guess who they think did it?
Obviously him. It's the reasonable assumption.
So he gets picked up. He manages to get bail. He gets released. Her tires get slashed again. Repeat. And eventually she put up cameras because she was like, the reason why he keeps getting bail is because it's like, well, you've got a weak case. She puts up cameras. And it turns out it was her neighbor. And so eventually it's like, okay, we're dropping all these charges and her neighbor, she was like, I'm not in a fight with this guy. Like, I don't have any beef with this guy. I don't know why he did it. But he's on camera doing it. So it's like,
some people do shit because they're just annoying people.
Yeah.
They're just assholes.
So it's like, but I don't know that their motive, that they necessarily, if I was them, I'd be being careful on the motive, right? I'd make noise about it, but I wouldn't overcommit.
Yeah.
Because, if the court doesn't find the motive, they might sort of go, this falls apart, when really they should be looking at the evidence there.
Right. Yep. It's so it's an interesting thing. Someone says, don't you have to prove motive in a murder case? No, you don't. Nope. It's not an element. It is a helpful rhetorical guide for a jury or a judge in a bench trial to say, look, here are these facts. Here's how it happened according to the facts. And here's why someone would do these things. That is, you have to remember that a lot of criminal acts, especially when you get up into like sexual assault crimes and murder, they're outside the scope of the normal human experience. Like, you guys are not going out murdering people. I think I'm not going out murdering people. And we don't understand why people do it, because it's not something that the overwhelming majority of the population engages in. So, so you have to bring people to it for the mental thing, but it's not a legal requirement in any way.
Yeah,
So.
and people often get that wrong. They're like, you need means, motive, and opportunity. I'm like, you don't actually really need any of those except opportunity.
Right. Yeah. The means can be an accident. But yeah, so very, very interesting. What we need to do is read through some chat. So let's close out. That's the Murdaugh motion thing. I do think this is one worth watching as we go. Yeah. What you got?
Somebody in the chat was insisting I tell you about the monkey farm.
The monkey farm.
The one juror who was removed, their occupation was they work on a monkey farm.
A monkey farm.
Like, apparently they're like research monkeys, which I was like, okay, that's a much better explanation, because I was wondering if there was like monkey milk for sale in that town. But
plant like a monkey paw in the ground and it sprouts a monkey out of it. Like, what's a monkey farm?
I assume they raise them like, you know, like it would probably be more like a monkey ranch, I guess.
Let's get the proper terminology in here. It's a monkey ranch. Oh God. Because yeah, it's a dairy farm, right? It's not a cow farm. It's a dairy farm because you're cultivating the dairy product. So a farm is something that is cultivating the product, not the livestock or whatever it's used to produce it. It's an egg farm, not a chicken farm. A chicken farm would be a hatchery, I guess.
Yeah, I was just like, okay, they've got this is as if this couldn't get any weirder. It's like, what's your occupation? You're expecting to hear like, oh, I work at I'm a server at a diner or, whatever else. And it's like, nope, monkey farm.
Yeah, that's didn't occur to me that there were monkey farms. It also didn't occur to me that there are monkey farms in Virginia.
Apparently there are monkey farms. It's like,
well, now I want one.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, you just, make the big money and buy a monkey farm.
What would you do? I mean, I guess get a bunch of typewriters.
Yeah, you're just like, bloody monkeys have produced zero Shakespeare.
Very weird. Very weird.
All they're doing is producing Biden campaign speeches.
Okay, so with that, the Murdaugh retrial motion will be following along. They should have a response to this motion out. I don't know the exact timelines, but typically we're going to be like 2 weeks to respond, and then or for the response, and the reply would be like another week after that. So be watching for that as that comes in. It'll be really interesting to see the counter arguments from the state on this one, justifying these alleged communications. The main thing would be to deny, but if they deny them, this of course creates a fact question that would merit an evidentiary hearing.
I mean, if you're a prosecutor at this point who like takes seriously the whole oaths to like represent justice and so forth, I'd probably be like, listen, we're not saying this happened. We agree an evidentiary hearing is required.
Yeah.
And if at the end of it, the evidentiary hearing, it's like this actually went down, if I'm the prosecutor, I'm just like, we're not arguing this. It's just, this has to be a new trial. We agree it has to be a new trial.
They should be compelled by the prosecutor ethics rules that if this happened, they would move for a mistrial. The prosecution would move for a mistrial and a retrial. Like that would be the proper ethical thing for a prosecutor to do if this came out to be true.
Which kind of suggests they might not do it.
Right. Yeah. One of the more surprising things is when you run across prosecutors who fulfill that oath. That is not, and by the way, that's not a criticism of prosecutors. I'm happy to criticize them all day. It's just kind of the nature of how things work in an adversarial system. That rule is nice in print. In practice, it's much harder because prosecutors tend to believe the trials, the cases that they bring are brought. They don't always do it, but they tend to believe they're doing it in good faith and in the interest of justice. And
I've had some great prosecutors. Like, I had a judge who's like, I'm convicted, I convict you. And the prosecutor was like, really? We direct a stay of proceedings, which kills the file. And it was just like, he said, like, I thought he was going to acquit. I didn't see that he's like, I was convinced by the end of it. So when he said convict, I was like, nope. So
right, and a prosecutor can that's an interesting point, right? The prosecutor brings the case, presumably in good faith. They think they have a case, and then something happens at trial. A witness flips or disappears. Evidence that they thought was critical to the case doesn't get admitted for whatever reason. They find out there was an issue of corruption or tampering at law enforcement that they weren't aware of when they brought the case. That gets exposed. Now they go, okay, well, yeah. And with these new facts come to light for everybody, including the prosecutor sometimes. Now, those are rare cases, but when it happens, you'll find a prosecutor say, you know what? Yeah, actually, thanks for bringing this up. If we would have known this, we wouldn't have wasted the time. Because prosecutors are very busy people too. It's not like they want to waste a bunch of time doing trial prep on something that could have been avoided. They have infinite work to do forever.
Oh, absolutely. And I've had prosecutors do that midway through, just going like, and quite literally, like what you said, I had 2 police officers admit that they had basically checked notes about what they were going to testify to before the trial. And the prosecutor was just like, thank you. We're done here.
Yeah.
And they were pissed. It was like, we booked 5 days of trial and this is what they're doing. Like, so they were just like, okay.
You booked 5 days of trial. You're prepping days before. You're getting your opening arguments ready. They're putting in 8-hour days of just trial prep, getting things organized. And then all of a sudden you go in, you find out, yeah, we're probably going to get boned because these idiots screwed up. I would have rather dropped the case or worked harder on a plea, brought a better plea offer, something like that.
And I've had prosecutors say like, hey, listen, we've got a witness who's not going to be able to be there. We're going to need a new trial date. We'll be able to get the adjournment. Like, we'll be able to get a second trial date. We're pretty sure about that. Or here's our real sweetheart deal, and take it to your client, let him know. And, you go to your client, you're like, they'll get another trial. They will probably convict you at that other trial. This is your best outcome.
Right.
And it's purely because the prosecutor does not want to book another 5 days for whatever trial.
So it's amazing what inconvenience can do for you. But with that, let's close out the Murdaugh topic. I'll be watching along for, the next document dumps. If that motion is televised, I'll definitely be looking to stream that. That sounds that sounds much more interesting than the trial we were presented. It'll also be much shorter, so that'll be fun. But we'll keep an eye on that. What I'm going to do right now, though, is I'm going to read the super chats on YouTube, and we're going to get over to Rumble. Because I'm already late on that, but of course, we'll get over to Rumble and continue the show there with that Liberty Safe topic. Oh yeah, it's gonna be.
Oh
fun.
Yeah, that one's gonna be. I suspect people are gonna have some opinions.
Fagan's Law out there. Hey, thanks, brother. He says, speaking of prosecutors, sent email and texted. I added you to my phone just today. I put your contact info in my phone, so I'll be reaching out to you, brother. I've just been really busy the past couple days. I'm not going to belabor it, but yes, I've got it. You're there, and definitely want to talk to you. Lassie F says, fighting a visa court case in TH. In TH. What is TH? Fighting a visa court case in TH. Due to a visa scam, and hope you will send a prayer for my kids and wife not to worry and give them strength in a hard time. By the way, the money is for that haircut. What is fighting a visa court case in TH? Thailand, maybe?
Maybe, or maybe a state that's misspelled.
Yeah, I don't know. Texas is TX. Tennessee's TN. I don't think there's a TH.
H and N are right next to each other on the keyboard.
Lazzy F says Thailand. Okay, so Thailand.
Okay, there we go. Yeah.
So fighting a visa court case in Thailand due to a visa scam. I hope you'll send prayer for your kids and wife not to worry and give them strength in a hard time. Absolutely. So my understanding is person went to Thailand. Sus. Just kidding. Went to Thailand. got scammed on a visa thing, and now is kind of stranded there while this thing pans out. They got a wife and kids at home. Of course, pray for their strength and resolve, and a quick resolution for you to get back to them as soon as possible. That is one of the most unimaginably stressful things I can think of. Is, you go through some mundane travel, and for whatever reason they're like, you can't go home. Like, what? I'm sorry, what? Like, for any reason,
even just losing your passport is like,
yeah. Or you get delayed. I think about it sometimes when we, like, if Lady Rackets and I travel somewhere, it's like, thank God we have a great network where we are of people who help out with our kids. But if we get delayed by a day, it's a big inconvenience. It's not that it can't work out, but like the person watching our kids, they weren't planning on that extra day. And then, so you got to get family to help out or whatever. Like, you have to mobilize the troops. And that's what the support network is for. In a time of emergency and unpredictability, you do it, but you don't want anybody to do that. And as that goes on day by day by day, it's crazy. I was thinking of some of those, like, people on the cruises during COVID. Can you imagine just be on this boat for like 3 weeks, y'all, just sitting around?
People who got in Canada, they lock people up in hotels. Like, they land off a plane. It's like, you're going to a hotel, you're stuck.
For weeks, wasn't it? Wasn't it like 6 weeks or something?
It was ridiculous. I can't remember how long it was, but and some of those hotels made out like absolute scammer bandits, because they were you have to pay for meals each day, and your meal each day is going to be like a bologna sandwich with like processed cheese
for $33.
Yeah, it's like, oh, okay, and like, a bottle of water, and that's your dinner. It's like,
and they had guaranteed business from the government. They could charge kind of whatever they wanted as long as it was quote unquote reasonable. But of course, under the circumstances of being forced to lodge people, you can adjust prices a little bit here and there and pad it out. It's amazing what government influence on private business can do. When the government says, we are guaranteeing you the selling of your product for X amount of time, you'll take advantage of it.
Yeah, and the best part is, they're also locals. So locals are unlikely to stay at hotels in their own area. So what are they going to do? Boycott you? Oh, well. Like,
the chance of you coming back is 1%. The chance of me being able to bilk you right now is infinity. So very good.
I can't say I've never stayed in a hotel in Edmonton, but it's not often. And the only time it's happened was I knew I was going to be so drunk at a hotel function that I was like, all right, I'm not driving home. I'm not taxiing home. I want to just be able to stumble up the stairs with help from a porter. And it's just going to be like, that's how far we're going.
Yeah, I live in a really small town. And the next town over is not big. The big town in our county is like 21,000 people. It's very small, right? And I think we have stayed in a hotel in town twice. Once was our wedding night, which, like, we didn't live out here yet. That was the other thing. We didn't live out here. We lived in the Twin Cities. Or no. We still lived with each of our parents. So I lived in the Twin Cities. She lived close by to here. And we were in college where we would end up, we were back from college when we got married, but then we went back to college. So we got a place there. But so we didn't live together here at that time. We didn't have anywhere to go other than parents' houses. And you don't want to go to your parents' house on your wedding night. That's weird. So we stayed there. And I think another time it was for like one of the hotels around here has like a water slide pool. And so we, the kids had I don't think it was one of our kids' birthday parties, but like a cousin, they had a birthday party there. So we just stayed at the hotel one night, and so the kids could get up and go to the pool all day. And that's it though. That's it. Yeah. Like, why? And I've lived out here for 13 years now, something like that, 14 years, I think. And it's like, yeah, you'd never go to a hotel in your hometown, like your hometown.
You can't even threaten to boycott. Like, okay, they're treating me badly, so I'll never come back here. They're like,
yeah, okay, all right. Well, you're going to tell all your friends who aren't going to stay here either? Cool.
Yeah.
The only thing I can think of, the only risk would be, would they be risking you someone's coming to visit you and you're going, oh, stay at this hotel type thing, or you've got some event, but that's not very common either.
Yeah, it's minimal damage. Unless you happen to be somebody who's like, booking a convention center or something. And what are the odds?
Well, and of course, you don't need a hotel anyway, because you have one of those cloaks, right? Like you just pull it over you, and it's like you look like a rock. You've got some lambus bread. You're just sitting there. You're like, I could do this. I could do this for a year. It's no big deal.
Just like I'm a hedge.
Exactly. Carazola X says, I was super worried when the judge was denying Murdaugh funds to use in his appeal and said he'd have to use a public defender. How can you justify that, taking away someone's ability to appeal their case? Well, the idea is that Murdaugh has a special circumstance, and I don't know that I fully agree with it, but in his trial, he effectively admitted to all of the financial crimes in his murder trial, which is another reason why I kind of believe Murdaugh didn't murder his family, because his financial crime presumptive sentence is a life sentence as well. Even if it's not a life without parole sentence, it's an effective life sentence for someone of his age, because we're talking about decades and decades behind bars. I facing well over 100 years in prison, and likely to receive somewhere near 100 years in prison based on the sentencing guidelines, the number of crimes that he would be convicted of, that he admitted to in his murder trial. So he has effectively admitted to these crimes. The judge may be preserving funds for restitution as possible, and saying, you can't use money that you stole, that you admitted that you stole, in your legal defense, because that's not your money. We know that's not your money. It effectively like a civil asset forfeiture by the court with an admission of guilt. I don't know that I fully agree with that, because I do think due process still matters, but at least putting it in perspective, there's a tangible reason why that might be allowed. Squizgar says, RE to Liberty safe issue. There's an updated response. It's a mea culpa. There was no back door. They just keep records of the factory set codes. In future, will require subpoena and allow customers to purge their combo. Yeah, they're backpedaling.
Yeah, and
really hard.
I don't know that it's a record of factory set. I don't believe that it's factory set codes. I have a different theory on that, but we'll when we get into that, I'll talk about what I suspect they're doing.
Right. And we'll get into that topic as soon as we get over to Rumble. Jacob McQuaid says, does it feel weird knowing that your shoulders are actually bigger than the act man's? No, it feels good, brother. Feels good. There's someone I can pass the shame down to. So shit flows downhill. And when you have shoulders as slender as mine, like the boulder of shit that hits you, and like you feel like the scoop, right? Like the boulder just drops right there. It's like, nope, you're the bitch that'll be this the focus of this ire forever. And then when you find, so you're Sisyphus pushing the boulder of shit back up the mountain. And then when you find out that, if you just turn around and push the shit the other way, there's just a ledge and there's someone with more narrow shoulders. You do that. And then you go, ha, you stupid little pussy. You got nothing. Act man, you and your narrow ass shoulders. Anyway, actually, I've never seen him, so I have no idea if that's true, but I'll take your, I'm going to take it on principle. Nicholas Staro's Trial Watch says, watching this in a hotel room bathtub really enhances the experience for all of us. Yes, it does. You too, man. Crash Override. Look up Liberty Safe in the defense contract they have. They're the only safe that is government rated for EMPs. I won't make the whole stream tonight, but that is why they allowed it and helped out. Could be.
You know what else is government rated for EMPs? A purely mechanical safe.
Yep. It's amazing how that works. And they have worked forever very effectively. C says, you should look up the first guy to challenge an NSL from the NSA. It was just one guy when companies like Google were just complying without question. Are you talking about LavaBit? Are you talking about the LavaBit guy? Which was a crazy case. The LavaBit guy was really interesting because they demanded the encryption key. It was 64-bit encryption key, so he printed it out. Here you go. And then the judge is like, nope, you're going to provide it in electronic form or I'm going to fine you like $5,000 a day. It's like, oh, okay, thanks. But no, that was at least that dude had some cojones to stand up for that. But again, LavaBit took a huge hit on that because in the end, LavaBit had an encryption key they shouldn't have had. Because if someone else has an encryption key, if I'm sending email to you through an encrypted email service and you and I have our encryption keys, the third-party email service that is transmitting the encrypted data should never have it because they shouldn't be able to get it. The government should have to come after you or me as individual citizens with an interest in the privacy to protect it. Because the third party, the only interest that they have is a marketing interest. That's it. And that's only if they market that privacy as being protected and then being anti-government and pro-liberty, which most companies actually are not that. So take it out of the company's hands. Lassie F says, wow, first super chat. Thanks, Nick, for the many months of being the relaxing moment in the morning. Much appreciated. All the best from Thailand. Hey, back at you. That was before the other chat about the visa court. Shredder SO7 says, what's up, Nick and Runkle? California State Senate passed AB 957, mandating parental affirmation of gender nonsense, or the state takes the kids. Any hot takes? Thanks for a great show.
I haven't read that one, but
can you even talk about that in your very libertarian utopia of Canadianistan?
Well, they just sent Jordan Peterson off for re-education training, and some of the comments that he made were like clearly sarcastic, and some of the comments he made were like really mild.
Yeah, like, absurdly mild.
Like that one about like, sorry, she's not beautiful and no amount of authoritarian whatever can make me, think so. I'm like, that's pretty mild. Like calling somebody not beautiful is like,
sorry, you're not exceptional.
Yeah.
You're normal. Holy shit.
I mean, I can use that to describe like 95% of the population. Like,
right. The whole concept of beauty is that it is held above the average. It is of note and meritorious, or not meritorious, worthy of comment and observation. The entire premise of an average is that it's not. It's mundane. It's normal. There's nothing wrong with it. The overwhelming majority of people are average at the overwhelming majority of things, looks, everything. That's what makes the average.
Before anybody gives me shit, like I'm saying this as a guy who's like a 4 in good lighting if you squint really hard. And if I wasn't like slightly funny, I would be if I wasn't at least slightly funny, I'd just like, it'd be over for me.
But it's the idea that so people's height is not of note. Like male height is not of note between 5'7" in the United States, between 5'7" and about 6'3", in my opinion. Yeah. Like I'm 6'2" and a half. You got to have the half in there to make people under 6 feet tall angry. But I'm 6'2" and a half, and I don't find my height to be particularly notable, but I am on the high end of kind of normal. I'm at the edge where beds start to become suspect. Like if I were any taller, it would be irritating. There are a few cars I can't fit in comfortably, but most cars I still can. You start to add 2 inches to my height and it becomes like the world becomes an irritating place to live in.
Oh, like, everything, door frames and yeah.
Right. Exactly. And so like Drex, for example, he's at least 4 inches taller than me. And it's funny, like you have to take in considerations that other people don't. It's of note. When I walk into a room, people are like, oh, that guy's kind of tall or whatever. And that's it. When Drex walks into a room, people ask him how tall he is. They're like, wow, you impressive black man.
And they start making the weather jokes. And
yeah. That's the difference between being beautiful and not beautiful. Is you could be a very attractive person. You walk in a room and people are like, oh, that's an attractive person or whatever. If you are beautiful and you walk into a room, people stop It is of note. It is out of the ordinary. And I love this story. Lady Rackets and I are at this resort, and this person walked by, and I can only describe them as an actual 10, because we're sitting there eating dinner, and this woman walks by, and every person, Runkle, every person, man, woman, everybody stopped eating. They all stopped.
Yeah.
And the person walked by, and it wasn't like a sexual thing. It wasn't a lustful thing. It was just like, you do not see people who look like this very often. And they walked by, and it was of note to everybody universally.
And people really underestimate the effect it has, because I had a client who was like that, just stunning. And she got into all sorts of trouble. But
and she got out of all of it too, right?
I could have run a trial about how she brought her shotgun, ski mask, and ransom note to the bank, and it's all just a big misunderstanding, and the judge would have gone with it. She got out of stuff that I was just like, how the hell did we win this trial? And it was just because she's stunning. She walks into the firm and, like, you know, comes into the appointment. I had to field questions from like 4 different lawyers who were asking why she was there and who she was. And I'm like, none of your business. Like, she's a client.
She's
That's all
mine.
you need to know.
Stay away.
But
it's in my office. We're friends.
Then the funniest thing, she stopped committing crimes. So I was kind of like curious about what happened to her. And then she phones me out of the blue to tell me what's going on. She stopped committing crimes because she married a guy with like more money than God. And she's just like, yeah, I'm not going to need your help. I don't have to steal things anymore because he pays for everything. And she wanted to offer me an invitation to her wedding. And I was like,
oh,
that's nice, but no, because I will literally have nothing to talk about other than like everybody asking, so how do you know her? And it's like, I can't answer this question.
Right.
Right. But it's just, people really don't, when you fall into that category, you are playing a different existence than the rest of us.
It's really crazy. Someone said, Jeep Guy says it wasn't her bazongas. No. It wasn't like, there wasn't an obvious physical feature. Like, you can find that everywhere. You can find a chick with a nice chest or a nice butt or whatever. You can find a guy who's really muscular, developed, even has a chiseled jaw. When objective beauty walks in the room, it's an event. It's rare. You don't encounter it very often, and everybody notices. And it's not some cheap thing. Someone said there's no such thing as a 10. I agree. Everybody's the top tier beauty people are 9s, but they're 10 in moments. And in that moment, that person was an absolute, unquestionable 10. No one, like, she looked like a filter was on her. Like, she looked airbrushed. It was weird. It didn't make any sense.
There's just a few people, and part of it is how you carry yourself. Like, I'm sure the same person who woke up just out of, just out of bed and was like tired and whatever else, maybe wouldn't have been able to have the same effect. But when you like knows
everything's
how to
on,
deliver it, right? It's like,
and it's it was an interesting experience, and I have not run into that very often. The crazy thing is, this was one of my problems. Someone said Amber Heard thought she had that. No. You misunderstand. Amber Heard had every opportunity to be that. Amber Heard on the red carpet with Johnny Depp was gorgeous, stunning. A person, if you saw them in person on that night, you'd be like, this. If you didn't know as a movie star, you would think she was. You would think she was a model. You would think she was someone important. When she showed up to court, she was never that. And I think that was wholly to her detriment. Wholly to her detriment. That had she done that, she would have had a much better chance of persuading the jury. Had she been that beautiful as she would have been on the red carpet years before, and not been a crazy bitch the entire trial, she could have pulled it off. But she went with cold feminist as her look and as her demeanor. And I'm sorry, but people don't like cold feminists. and you got to be likable at trial. You should exploit every advantage that you have. She had a lot of advantages that she left at the door.
Oh, if you're dropping $6 million on your legal team, I don't care what your personality is. I don't care. You're taking the time to look good. And I mean, you do this even with a guy who's just literally dragged himself out of a gutter. I've put like button-up shirts on people on more occasions than I can count, because it's just like, all right, this guy who's like, I've carried, I had an oversized button-up shirt that I'd carry around, because you go up for a trial and suddenly somebody walks in, they're wearing a shirt that says like all cops are bastards, and you're like,
thanks,
we're not running your trial like that.
Yep.
Like,
yeah, that's the thing that just bothers me so much about her defense is, if you've got $6 million of budget, just have Amber's stylist come in. And when her stylist says, wear a Hillary Clinton pantsuit, you shoot them in the head and you hire a better stylist. And with the $6 million, you fight your own legal defense. Like, it's insane that they ran what they ran with her, because there's so much to work with as a sympathetic female in 2022, with a defamation case of a presumptively abusive husband that everybody has accepted is abusive for the past 4 years, except for a fringe group of internet weirdos who are like, no, men don't abuse women. Like, that's their perception. That's the public perception of guys who don't hashtag listen and believe, is that they're all like these incel, neckbeard, drunkard, abusive misogynists. Those are the people supporting Johnny Depp at the beginning of the trial. By the end, everybody is.
And she walks in like in this, like, I'm going to play like I'm the strong, powerful. It's like, no, that's not even your line. That's not your argument. Your argument here is that you are the vulnerable, victimized person. Like, know your own story. A lot about lawyering is storytelling.
Right.
And if you can't stick with your own narrative, how do you think anyone else is going to?
Yep. And it sucks that it is not, a puzzle put together by a gifted child. Law involves people, and it involves persuasion and psychology. And the fact that, that was omitted from Amber Heard's defense, I think and again, I like the outcome. I think that's a big disservice to the client who paid them so much money that they just or not even that they overlooked it. I have to assume that everything was intentional, but that it was missed by that big of a margin, because that was something that I thought every single day merited commentary. And some people were like, stop talking about her looks. I'm like, no, not a chance. If you have the looks to be a Hollywood actress who is hired, and my apologies to the young women of Hollywood, you're hired on your looks. You are kept around on the acting skill you develop beyond as your looks begin to fade. Those are different things. She capitalized on those looks, and she didn't at trial. And the fact that they didn't exploit them is a massive oversight, or just a complete miss. Cult of personalities. Oh wait, real quick to Shredder, to answer your question though. Compelling parents to affirm gender dysphoria in a child is one of the most tyrannical and oppressive things I can imagine. No state, no psychologist, no anybody will ever know my child better than I will. And my child will believe things that I will disagree with. And the reality is, children are effectively stupid. I know this because we were all children at one point. You have an underdeveloped ability to conceptualize ideas, to make things in the abstract versus concrete. And you can be more successfully led into conclusions as a child than you can as an adult. Now, that's not all adults are as smart as all children. That's not what it's saying. But as a person matures, they become better able to discern things. No government will ever be able to tell me something about my child that is true, that I think is false. That is, in my opinion, one of the purest and ugliest tyrannies. And it is striking at the very core of what I think is critical in life, and that is the family unit and structure, faith in it, and its preservation. Now, again, people can be abusive assholes. They can be monsters, and that can include parents who refuse to accept some sort of identity statement from children. I just do not think that that alone is sufficient to be that. And that I think that is very overbroad and needs to be addressed immediately. Cult of Personality says, either of you nerds play Baldur's Gate 3 yet? I really want to.
I've played it some. I haven't gotten as far as I'd like, just because I'm so busy. I do law, and then I do YouTube stuff, and then I occasionally find some time to sleep. So I haven't gotten to. I assume that the game is going to get you to Baldur's Gate at some point. I have not gotten there.
It's a 200-hour game.
Yeah, and parts
That's
of it
a lot of hours.
Parts of it are a lot of fun. Parts of it have been annoying the hell out of me. Like, every NPC has some secret, backstory that is annoying. Like, one guy was like, okay, you're a pretty good mage. And then he's like, by the way, I need to eat magic items. And I was like, really?
Yeah.
Really?
That's fucking irritating.
So I just kind of want to start like throwing them all into the sun.
Sometimes that happens in RPGs. So an old D&D first edition AD&D RPG computer RPG out there is called Dungeon Hack, which is fucking awesome. If you guys have not played Dungeon Hack, you can go get it. I think on Good Old Games for free or like $2, and it is amazing. It's amazing. It's like Eye of the Beholder style. It's tile-based movement, first person, and you make a character. And look, if you put it on difficult settings, you might get fucked. I had a level 15 ranger in AD&D first edition 15 ranger, and I'm smoking this dungeon dual wielding. I got like +3 scimitar, and I got like a +2 short sword. I'm fucking everything up. And I got into this floor that had these blobs. And when you hit them, there was a high percentage chance that they would dissolve your weapon.
Oh.
But they could only be hit by magical weapons, mind you. So all of a sudden, all my magic weapons, which I had accumulated over this multi-level dungeon, I'm pretty fucking far in the game, all of my weapons are gone. And I'm down to just hands. But you can't hit them with just hands because they're not magical. And so I had wands that like a fireballs and magic missiles. So I'm using them, just trying to get to the exit. Normally I would clear out every floor, like the whole thing, because you might miss loot. This one, I'm just trying to find the exit, and I ran out of the means to fight. And your game's just over. You're just going to eventually die because there's nowhere to go. There's no weapon. You could go all the way back to the front floor and still run out of weapons that even if you left stuff behind, you'd never have it. And it was like, that's the pure D&D. That's the D&D of old. New D&D is like, it's geared for you to like progress the story and kind of like win eventually, even if it's hard. Old D&D is like, nah, fuck you.
Yeah, sorry. You rolled a 2. You have died, and your character cannot be, revived. Sorry.
Yep. It's called Dungeon Hack, and it is. I will occasionally just go back and play Dungeon Hack. It is one of the most fun games ever. I recommend you make a wizard character and get vampiric touch, because you become a god with that spell, because it allows you to overcharge your hit points, so you can build up this giant fucking store of them by just loading all of your level 3 spell slots with vampiric touch and go up slapping shit for 70 damage. Oh, it's amazing.
Well, I've also been playing like everybody's done this thing about Starfield, and I'm like, I have not played it, and I don't really have a whole lot of interest in trying it. Regardless of the whole pronoun thing, I'm just like, nope, it was never on my radar. And I kind of feel like a lot of the controversy is to get you to buy a game that you weren't otherwise going to buy, just because now it's like. But I used to play this Mud, and Muds are like online multiplayer text games.
Dude, I played the shit out of Muds.
Oh,
I still play one.
Well,
Runkle, 22 years.
This one has a story because it was a pay
23
Mud.
years. Okay, it was a paid. Which one was it?
It's called the Magic Realm, and it was located sort of in the Vancouver area where I grew up.
Okay, sure.
You had to actually go down to like one of the video, like this, like a place that sold like Nintendo games and so forth, and they would sell you these little cards that had a like a coupon code that you then enter in, and it would give you so many hours on it. I played the hell out of that, and then in the era where they were starting to develop like massively multiplayer online games,
Yeah.
these guys were experimenting with a graphical mud, and so they got bought out in
Nice.
by Electronic Arts bought them out so that they could get the get this technology basically.
Yep.
And then they got the servers and they put them into storage because they're like, we got these assets, we don't know what to do with it, so we're putting them in storage. And the game was dead for like 20 years. But it was such a good game that somebody was like following up with them going, we need this game back. And Electronic Arts finally found the original servers and were like, we have no use for this. Do you want it? So they got the game back up and running. And right now it's not open to the public. It's you have to have had an original account. I've been playing the hell out of this 20-year-old, like 20 years dead mud.
And muds are magic. They are gaming perfected. You will never convince. Like EverQuest was a mud with graphics, effectively. That's why I loved EverQuest. But at the end of the day, I would play I'd still play the mud that I played the most. The mud that I played the most and still occasionally peruse is called Turn Ale originally, and then it became Otherworld mud as like ownership got very complicated with it. I've played it on and off for I think it's 23, 24 years now. And I love it. Like I still have a character. My character's so goddamn OP, it's hilarious. But you know, it's a character that's 20 years old. It's fucking funny. But I also played I played this mortar base mud. That's circle mud, or LP mud is the base, heavily modified. I played this mortar base mud, which I think the big mortar base mud was called Isengard. And I tried to play that, but it was gay. There was one I played called Chaos Mud, though, which the only rule on Chaos Mud was do not crash the mud intentionally. That was it. You could cheat, you could multiplay, you could fuck people over, you could do everything you want. It was great. It was the Wild West. It was everything great about muds. You could I remember one of my friends in real life, well, on my best friend's brother's friend in real life played an assassin. He was such a cunt. He played an assassin on there, and I had a wizard, and he logged in one time. I knew he was logging in, and I summoned him into a place where like water damage was tripled, and I just I summoned him with a little bitch character, and then I stunned him, and then I just fucked him up with the highest level water spell, and he was like, "What?" And I was like, "Get wrecked, you whore!" And then he was mad, so I did it again right away. It's like, yeah, fuck you. And I took all his stuff. He's so pissed. And he was older than me too. I was a kid, right? And so he tried to beat me up.
There was this game that so while this other mud was dead, I was looking around at various other options, and one of them was this Star Wars mud. And
yeah,
so you could play a Jedi, and they had like Force as a stat that ranged. If you were playing a Jedi, you could reliably get Force somewhere between 50 and 75 is about where it would top out.
Yeah. Okay.
And Jedi were lethal in every setting except for some reason piloting. A good pilot character could just smoke them in like when they're traveling between planets.
Good.
So I was playing a pilot because most of the Jedi on the game were assholes. So I'd like hunt them down sometimes, like the ones who were being real dicks. I'd hunt them down when they were in ships and just smoke them with this pilot character. But There, you also had a very small chance with any character to just spontaneously develop force powers, and that was
Oh,
very heavily weighted towards like low level shit.
yes.
But it could go up to 100. And my random generation of force powers landed at 99.
Oh, no, 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 no.
So I'm suddenly the most powerful Jedi in the game and the best pilot. And Jedi had a few powers that helped piloting, which were not enough to make them good against a real pilot. But when you're already a pilot, they just it was
Ooh,
so bad. I was just like, all right, I can kill whoever and whenever I want, and I got some scores to settle.
yep. Oh, so great. Dude, so the list of mods that I played, to be complete, I played Turnal, which became Otherworld. I still occasionally log in. I know none of you play it because I still talk to the very few people who remember that it exists and pop in from time to time. It's some of my, like, I invited these people to my wedding. These people were like they were my first online friends that transcended online interaction, right? These are people that I would consider actual friends that I had only ever spoken to via text. But they're there. I'm actually so excited. One of these people is coming to my Nashville show.
Oh,
Yeah,
awesome.
texted me. He's like, "Hey man, I'll be at your Nashville show." And I didn't say anything because you don't want to be gay. And I was like, I was so unreasonably excited. I was like, fuck, I haven't seen this guy since he came to my wedding. He came to my wedding. I haven't seen him since then though. You live in different states and you have different lives. It's like, fuck, I haven't seen this guy in 19 years. It's gonna be amazing. But these are real, like, lasting friendships that you would form in these because MMOs they're muds on screen with graphics, but they're way bigger, right? Even the biggest muds, you're talking about a couple hundred people online, which is a lot. But in EverQuest, you're talking about 50,000 plus people on a server. And so, like, the interaction and intimacy, and most muds, I would suggest, are probably around the neighborhood of active players in the neighborhood of 10 to 50 active players at any given time. So you're talking about real, like, the people you're playing with for significant stretches. But the other ones I played, there was a brief beta of a mud called Ithaca, which was a mortar base, but it didn't survive. And then the one I did play a lot of also was Raven Mud, which was really fun. Raven Mud was like a really well done mud, and truly, like, you needed to be a multiplayer group in Raven Mud to accomplish most of the game. Raven Mud was fantastic, but I was an asshole in that mud, so it was good.
The one I've been playing again now, it's unforgiving. Like, you get a certain number of lives each level, and if you run out of them, that character's done. Like, it's just gone. You lose the character. So it's like there is permanent death, and there's player killing,
Ooh,
and there is
that's brutal.
oh, and like the quests, some of the quests out on this thing have never been solved because they're just they're deeply difficult.
Yep.
I was playing earlier today. We spent several hours trapped in an area because we found an old area that we'd forgotten existed, and we couldn't remember how to get out.
Fuck.
So we're just like wandering around there, and it's permanent death. And all, like, a lot of the gear is just like, I cannot replace this item. It is a magical item. It is unique in the game. If I don't make it out of here, that's lost. Okay, I've got a little bit of skin in this game, like a little bit of tension. It's
That's what I really like. The mud that I always have gone back to is Otherworld mud, mainly because it was consistently developed by a guy who had no reason to do it. Like, the original owner kind of abandoned the project, and this guy he's a long time immortal or kind of DM for it, or game assistant. He kind of took it over as a passion project. No reason, no profit, and often no thanks from the player base. He did it. He taught himself to code to keep the game up to date, to make new stuff. and it was just pure love for the players. He's also a really good dude in general. And I would, if he ever reached out to me for help, like I would drop everything as if he were my brother. I've known this guy forever. But that being said, I would go back to this game. One of the main things I liked about it was there were unique items. There's only one in the entire game, and only one person can get it at a time. And like, if you have it, they're exceptionally powerful, and no one can get it. No one else can. It is the thing that will, it might change a character to make them obscenely overpowered in some way. And also it might not, like, not all of them were good. There are a lot of unique items that were like low level that were just better than the other items that level. But at the high end, no, they're items that are almost game breaking in the right hands and with the right combinations. And that's what I loved about it. It's like, this game is so interesting because the right combination, usually one you don't expect, with the right equipment can produce results that you don't get. And that's actually why I like Bethesda games, is because since they were single player games and there was no impact to anybody else, they did allow you to find combinations that would break the coding. It would break what was intended. And it's like, look, if you can do it, if you can find it, go ahead, go do it. And I love that. That's what I hate about everything being online, everything being multiplayer, everything being tied to other people's experiences is, no, sometimes I just want to find the right combination of race, class, ability that I focused on, and specific piece of gear that I have found to come up with some exploitative thing and fuck up the entire game. That's what I want to do. And this game has the ability to do that. But not, there are plenty of things. I have probably objectively the most powerful character on that game. There are characters that do a bunch of stuff better, but none that do everything as well as mine. And there's shitloads of stuff that I cannot do by myself still, and never will be able to. It's great. I love it.
Oh, the starting beginner dungeon on this thing has death traps. It has teleporters that make it really hard to map. And it has a level cap. You get kicked out after level 2. And there are parts of it that you absolutely cannot beat at level 2.
Yep.
And there's also parts of it, there are things that dump you into an event, like another dungeon that is designed for a much higher level. And it isn't like, oh, you're dumped right near the entrance. It's like, no, you're dumped way deep in there. It's like, welcome aboard. There are people who are playing this and are just like, I had forgotten how unforgiving this game is. And it makes it so much better because if you figure out something that works really well, you get to enjoy that. But if you get smoked, you have to live with the consequences of it too. And
it's brutal. It's old school RPGs and it's the best. It's the best.
So much stuff that you do in gaming is just kind of like Wiffle World because it's just designed to make you
dude, I remember, so when EverQuest started, because I played EverQuest a lot. When EverQuest started, if you died, everything you owned that was in your inventory and not in a bank stayed on your body. So you're naked and you had to go back to the place that killed you while fully geared to get your body, or you had to convince someone to get it for you. And you had to consent to them getting your corpse and bringing it to you, which meant they could take your stuff. So it had to be someone you trusted. It was amazing. And then eventually, like, people complained enough and they took that out, and it's like, no, when you die, all your stuff goes to you, all your money. Like, I think your money stayed on your corpse. So like if you didn't get it back, whatever money you had on you would stay there. But otherwise, like, it wasn't a big loss. You had all your shit. But it's like, man, I remember this one time we were doing the Plane of Fear for the first time as a guild. And I was a little necromancer, a little gnome, and I went in there and I feigned death, and everybody fucking died. Everybody just got killed. It was like, how are we gonna get our stuff? Like, well, when all these enemies stop fucking me up, I'll get up and drag corpses. And it was like 10 hours of corpse recovery. It's like that was the juice, though. That's what made the game worth playing, was the risk, and then the teamwork required to overcome the loss. And you cared because all of your time was put into that shit. And if you couldn't get it back, it was fucking horrible.
This one has the same thing. If you die, you leave a corpse with all your gear on it, and you got to recover it.
Yep.
So you better hope it's somewhere that you can get to it. You don't also have to. There's nothing about giving permission to recover it. It's just somebody can walk up and be like, "Oh, hey, a corpse. I'm going to take your stuff." And
you better get there first.
You better get there first. Or sometimes, like, I had moments of having to buy my gear back from somebody who didn't necessarily like me.
Yep.
And it's like, you hate it, but you're like I was previously playing a spell singer, so it's basically a bard, but they use musical instruments as weapons, and so nobody else does.
Yep.
So this item was useless to the guy who killed me, but it was still like, well, I'll sell it to you for this much money, and I'm like, I hate you, but I will pay you.
Have no option. Option. God, I fucking love it. I could talk about this shit all day. We got to keep moving. Character Holding says, Runkle, your country is on fire and your governing dictator is basically a male Amber Heard. Tell your women to stop voting. I'd like to breathe this week. Damn. Darth Bender says, hey, Nick, any plans for a painting stream? Yes, but probably not till I'm back from Nashville. I reached out to Sargoon, and Sargon apparently is coming to the U.S., and so I'm going to try and find out where he's going to be and when. If I can make the trip, I'll go and buy him whatever. I don't know what British people drink, like the tears of the Irish, or if they drink, I don't know what it is, but I would love to meet Sargon in person. But yes, after I get back from Nashville, painting stream. Nancy Kane, I don't think he had the balls to pull the trigger, but he knows who did. Very possible. Scarvy the Strange says Runkle is the elf on a shelf when flying. And going back to that Nancy thing, Nancy, what you just said, that was the interesting thing of Murdaugh, is it's highly possible that Murdaugh's wife and child were murdered and his other child was spared. And the threat was, if you do anything, your last child will be murdered too.
Yep.
It's highly possible that that Murdaugh didn't defend himself or didn't produce alternatives, didn't turn people in because he still had one child. There's an interesting facet of this case. Legal Vice says, I figure I'm good as long as I can pull the tray down flat and I don't have to use a seatbelt extender. Both of those are important. Tim Chang, Legal Vice is out here humble bragging. Nancy Kane, I could be wrong, but I think she is the person who told the DUI guy that she is the person that can get him in the courtroom. He did say she was really nice. I know he and James from court had talked to her, the clerk of court, on multiple occasions. I can't confirm what your super chat says, but he did mention her today on Twitter. Legal Vice is also interesting. None of the jurors would talk to the defense lawyers after the trial, but after a book was published, at least 3 jurors got pissed and independently of each other approached them. Yep.
And I mean, I might get pissed too if I found out that there was a book that, if you're pissed at this person and now you're finding out they're making money off it, that can rouse people.
Yeah. It's I don't know. People can be nice. People can seem genuine. They can also be pieces of shit. Tim Chang says, what do you call a plantation in Flint? Monkey Ranch. Now that's uncalled for. Tina Bogale says, hell from Dubai. Hell from Dubai? Oh, the fuckery with M cases is real. I think they mean hail from Dubai. Me04120 says, can you bring Runkle to Nashville, Rackets? Well, he's certainly invited, but I don't know if I can bring him.
I am out of, I've had to pull, because there were 2 funerals I had to go to, and they were both overseas. So I am out of ability to go places for a while. Otherwise, I'd love to, because I've been kicking myself over not being able to go there, but I don't think I've thought real hard about whether I could make it work, and I just don't see a way without.
There will be future opportunities.
Yes,
to
it's
hang out.
basically without blowing up my life. I don't think I can do it.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Look, I doesn't bother me at all because I assume next year I'll probably do another Vegas show and then figure out another place to do one, and then I'll probably be at someone else's show somewhere. And it looks like I'll be back at Anime Matsuri next year as well. Gonna start finding people to come to Anime Matsuri for 2024. They want to do the Creator Corner bigger than ever, and I have some ideas already from people who like me and people who don't, but may be enticed by business opportunity. I don't care if people don't like me. I want to make the convention succeed, and I have some really good ideas on how to do that. So I'm going to be working on that as soon as possible. Doc Salty 96, I can attest to the annoyance. I am 6'4", and everything is either way too long or just too short. Yep. Steve Robertson says the jurors said in interviews that the Snapchat video sealed the deal for them. In spotty service, the video may not have uploaded until the phone reconnected to the tower 20 or 30 minutes after it was recorded. Is this possible? Yeah. Oh, absolutely. You don't have to have any sort of special fancy training to do this. Get a program that verifies when something transmits. Facebook Messenger will tell you when your chat goes through. Signal will tell you when something is sent versus not sent. And it will also verify when the other party receives it, even if they haven't seen it. So like Facebook Messenger has this little checkbox or check circle system. And there's a check circle for sent, there's a check circle for delivered, and then there's a check circle for viewed. All of those things are different. You can try this yourself. Go to a place of shitty service, send a message, wait, and then you'll see when it goes through. And it could be 10 minutes later, it could be an hour later, it could be 2 hours later if you don't have service. Debbie O says you're 2.5 hours in, still live on YouTube and talking about video games. ETA for Liberty Safe, or did I miss it? We're gonna go to Rumble right now. That's the last chat on YouTube that we're doing. We're going to go to Rumble right now. 25-second little stinger. After that, I'm going to hit the bathroom real quick. I'm going to make Rumble stand in for me as my champion. And then after that, we're hitting Liberty Safe. So it should be just a minute here. Thank you to everyone on YouTube. Please consider popping over to Rumble. The link is in the pinned chat. It's also in the description of the YouTube video. We'll continue over there. And I don't know how long Runkle has, but I have at least 2 more hours to go. So we're gonna do that. I don't want to keep him too long, but he's welcome to stay for as much as he's able. We'll see you guys there in just a minute. Peace. Peace.
For the thousands in attendance and the millions watching around the world, ladies and gentlemen,